you. Thank you for that great music.
Thank you.
I love that first song you did. Is it an old Bobby Darin? I know I've heard Bobby Darin sing it.
Well,
That's all.
Yeah. It's just an old standard. Yeah.
I like Bobby Darin's version, and I loved your version too.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for doing that.
Sure.
So this month we've been talking about growing together in love, light, and possibilities. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Can we see that first slide to review what Debbie was talking about last week? She talked about imagination, will, and intuition. And today I'm going to expound a little bit on that last one, which is intuition. But we call these mental faculties, faculties that we can use to take advantage of more of the possibilities in life, really to live life to the nth degree, to really embrace life and enjoy life. But before we go into that, I would like to spend a little time this morning just reviewing the philosophy of science of mind. We've seen some new faces that probably don't know exactly what we're all about, and I think for me it really helps just to think about this from time to time. How does this philosophy work? So there's a slide we have that it shows our teaching circle. It's the second slide. Oh, wow, there it is. So the circle, to me, the circle just simply says, with our higher power or God or whatever we call it, there's no beginning, there's no end. That's the circle. We can't actually put God in a circle, but there's no beginning, no end. And we divide it into three different parts. That top part we could call the seed. I like to think of it as the part where we set our intentions. What is it that I want out of life? This is our conscious part. What are we thinking about? What is it we desire? And then those thoughts go into this middle part, the soil, or we call it the law. And this part is neutral. It's like the soil that we plant a seed in. If you plant a watermelon seed, you're not going to get a radish. That soil is neutral. It's going to give you what you plant. So if we have thoughts of love and joy and peace and forgiveness and harmony, all that good stuff, if we plant those seeds into the soil of the universe, it's going to outpicture on the bottom as the plant, as a joy-filled life, as a blessed life. It also works the other way. If our thoughts are going to unforgiveness and worry and fretting and not good stuff, if those are the seeds we're planting. We're always planting some seeds with these thoughts. And again, the soil is neutral, so it's going to give us. So if we're having unforgiving thoughts, if we're having let's get even thoughts, our life is going to look like a kind of a nasty, warlike life. And maybe that's what people have been doing too much of. It's important to keep our thoughts positive and constructive. We all have the power to do that. And I think this is a good, it's just a good symbol to remember that we have the power to change our lives if we choose to. So, and let's go back to that first slide now. So, an open mind and an open heart is what we're talking about today. And, you know, even though we've talked about these senses, the imagination, the will, and the intuition, the imagination, sort of like a horse sitting in that gate waiting to come out, you know, and those horses get so excited. What are they doing? They're imagining themselves running down the racetrack, winning a race. And the will is what keeps them on track, And the intuition is the guidance that we get. And so we can all think of ourselves that way. Our lives are like that. We can listen to our intuition, stay on the track, and go for that thing which we have imagined, that thing that we desire in our life, that we've spent some time thinking about. This is what is important to me. So I want to talk a little bit further about the intuition that Reverend Debbie talked about last week. And there's an example that I'll give you. Ernest Holmes says in his Science of Mind textbook, he said, the pent-up energy of life and the possibility of further human evolution work through our imagination and our will. That's what we're made of. This is how life works. There was a woman named Genevieve Barron, and this was back in the early 1900s, and she wanted to be a student of a guy named Thomas Troward. Now, Thomas Troward was a guy that Ernest Holmes liked to read. Their philosophies were very much the same, although Ernest Holmes was here in the United States, Troward was in England. And Troward had been corresponding with this Genevieve for a while, but he didn't want to take her on as a student. And she was kind of tenacious. She really wanted to study under him. She just thought he was brilliant. So after 2 months of corresponding, Troward writes to her and he said, "What do you suppose is the meaning of the verse in the 21st chapter of Revelations, verse 16? And the city lieth foursquare, and the length is as large as the breadth. And he measured the city with the reed, 12,000 furlongs. The length and the breadth and the height of it are equal." Now, I don't know why she couldn't figure this out. It seems rather self-explanatory. Of course, I didn't know what it meant either till the end of the story. But that was she was supposed to answer this for him. She didn't have a clue, but what she did do is she kind of thought to herself, if I can give him the right answer, he's going to let me be a student of his. So she right into everybody she ever knew, anybody that had any, that she thought she was right into priests and ministers and nurses and doctors and scholars of every kind, acquaintances. What does this verse mean? And she was getting answers back from different places all over the world, and intuitively, she knew that that wasn't the answer Troward was looking for. So she just kept looking, and she thought, well, maybe if I read some of Troward's older books, I'll find the answer in his own writing. A lot of his books are out of print. She couldn't get the books. So she goes to this used bookstore, and she's looking around, and she sees a book, but it's very expensive. And as she's haggling with the clerk about the price of this book, she sees a book by an astrologer, a professor of astrology. And she says to the clerk, maybe I should have that guy read my horoscope. And the clerk said to her, "Oh," he said, "No, madam, he is one of France's greatest astrologers. He does not read horoscopes." But guess what she does? She goes to see this guy. She doesn't really know why, but she's listening to that still small voice within her. She goes to see the guy, gets to his door, and she doesn't quite know what to say, so he invites her in. She's with a friend of hers, and they go in and sit down, and she said, "Will you read my horoscope?" And he's like, "No, madam, I don't read horoscopes." And so her friend gets up, she's heading for the door, we got turned down. But Genevieve, again, listening to her intuition, just sat pat for a moment. And as she did that, this professor's cat jumps on her lap. And this got the professor's attention because the cat, this was unusual for the cat to do this. You know how cats are. So he says, "Madam, my cat pleads for you. I also now feel an interest in your horoscope. And if you will give me the date, it will be my pleasure to write it out for you. Now, I don't know how they did horoscopes in those days, but it sounded pretty in-depth that she had to write a bunch of stuff out. He said, I'll pick it up Sunday. She said, okay. So he comes to her house on Sunday. She opens the door. She's got this data for him. And as she hands it to him, she decides to ask him about that verse. And she asks him what he thinks that verse meant, that Troward was asking her about. And he said, without even blinking an eye, he said, the city signifies the truth, and the truth is non-invertible. Every side from which you approach it is exactly the same. And she thought, intuitively, that's what Troward's looking for. So she sends Troward this interpretation of that verse, and he writes back, your answer is correct. I'm beginning a course of lectures on the Great Pyramid in London. If you wish to attend them, we'll be pleased to have you. And afterward, if you wish to study with me, I think it can be arranged. I mean, so she stuck to her guns, basically listening to her intuition, following what her intuition was telling her. So this just goes to show you, and I'm sure at least some of you have had instances in your life where you had an intuition and either you followed up on it or you didn't, and what the results of that were. So the idea is to use your imagination, your will, and your intuition, along with 3 other mental faculties I'm going to go into. And the first one is perception, and that's what Colleen was reading about this morning. Perception, your power to decide what something means. So Hamlet, in one of the lines in Hamlet, there is nothing either bad or good, but thinking makes it so. Our thoughts are so powerful. And yet, the reality is, aren't there some things that are bad? Isn't a car crash bad? Isn't murder bad? Isn't war bad? Yet, there is a power in the universe that is good, and it doesn't have any opposites. That's our higher power. And it is good. There is no opposite to that. So the point is, as we remember that, we can look at a situation and maybe not make such a quick judgment about how bad something is. Be a little open to it and look at it with a different perspective. And when we do this, depending on what kind of perspective we take, we can either bring our consciousness up a notch or we can bring it down a notch, just depending on how we decide to look at that particular situation. Holmes says in Creative Mind and Success, limitation is an experience of the human race. It is not the fault of God, it is the fault of our perception, how we look at things. So we should use our imagination, again, to what is it that we desire in our life? That's what we should be thinking about. And we are given that God-given gift of imagination to think about what is it that I want out of life. Now, this idea of taking a different perspective of something, I was just thinking about a couple of weeks ago, we got notice that they were going to shut our elevator down in the building I live in. Well, now it's only 3 floors. I live on the 3rd floor. Stairs were not a real favorite of mine for quite a while. I'd kind of avoid whenever I had to take stairs. Well, here I am looking at a week of going up 3 flights of stairs, whatever, if I had to get groceries or whatever. And, I thought, my first thought was, this is going to be awful. I'm going to get sore, I'm going to have to drag stuff up and down these stairs. This is going to be an awful long week. And then I decided to take a different perspective toward this, look at it a different way. And the way I looked at it was, and we got some advance notice. We knew it ahead of time, a few weeks. So I started practicing, going up and down those stairs, down those long hallways, down the stairs, up the stairs, down. And what a blessing. What a blessing that was. So that when the elevator went down, I could do that without causing myself to be in bed for a week. And, when you're out of shape, your body does not like those little surprises, like going up 3 flights of stairs. So that's the difference, the perspective. How do we look at something? It can be a blessing, it can be a curse, and it makes a big difference, and we are in charge of how we look at things. So we've got imagination, will, intuition, perspective, and then the fifth mental faculty is memory. And when we think about memory, we usually think about, well, I remember this from when I was in the 5th grade, I remember this from last week. But in Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking Glass, the Queen says to Alice, "Tell me what you did tomorrow." And Alice laughs and she says, "I can't tell you what I did tomorrow. Tomorrow hasn't happened yet." And the Queen said rather pityingly, "Well, it's a poor memory that works only one way." And I think for our purposes, that idea of this memory is memorize that desire you have. Memorize who you want to be. I am the woman that has energy. I am the woman that loves people. I am the woman that has purpose and drive in life. I am the woman that's joyful. Let's imagine these things, put that to our memory, rather than, if only I was 15 pounds thinner, if only I had a better education, if only this weather wasn't so bad, if only they didn't turn the elevator off, if only, when we start visualizing the good that we want to be, that person that we want to be, however you see yourself in that bright light, whenever we do that, guess what? We cannot at the same time visualize the negative. So it's so important to keep our thoughts positive and constructive. I like the idea of when we practice gratitude. If you're in a situation that's uncomfortable for you, like you feel you're on the cusp of letting somebody have it or crying or getting mad about something, if you think to yourself, I'm going to take a moment here and I'm going to think about what I'm grateful for right here and right now. And when we sit in gratitude like that, it is impossible for us to entertain anything other than being grateful. We're not going to be fussing about this, that, the next thing. We're not going to be unforgiving. We're not going to be thinking about retribution. When we're thinking about gratitude, we're in gratitude. It makes those other things impossible. So we want to memorize this person that we want to be. Genevieve Barron, this lady that went to see Troward, she says, "Your mind is the center of a divine operation waiting to expand by means of you." And this isn't her, but this is me. Memorize yourself as you desire to be. Spend time with that. Oh, if we would spend more time memorizing and thinking about the life we desire versus what else do I have to do? And am I going to run into that jerk at this party? Instead of that, think about the things that lift us. Be grateful. Memorize that person that we truly know we are. And so the sixth of these mental faculties is reason. And it's a really powerful faculty. However, I think what a lot of us do when it comes to reason is we look out and we see, well, what are they doing? Oh, that must be reasonable if they're all doing that, instead of listening to that still small voice within us. It's so tempting to be on that bandwagon with everybody else. If they're doing it, it must be reasonable. But when you think about it with Genevieve, how reasonable was it for her to go see this horoscope guy? She didn't really want to have her horoscope read. He didn't want to read her horoscope. And yet, that's what she did. That didn't seem reasonable. But when you're listening to your own heart, when you're listening to your own intuition, that's what leads you in a way that won't lead you astray. So when you find those things that you feel you're being led to do, just give it your all. Just know that you are being led by a higher power, and you can trust that. William James, who was an American philosopher and psychologist, said this: "A new idea is first condemned as ridiculous, then dismissed as trivial, and finally it becomes what everybody knows." All of a sudden, we are all doing it. It's accepted. So I just want to conclude today that our infinite possibilities are open when we use these God-given mental capacities, when we use our imagination, will, intuition, perspective, memory, and reason. We open up a sea of possibilities. And if we could see that third slide, what I'm going to suggest for you, you might think about this, is for an affirmation this week, consider, I open my mind and my heart to infinite possibilities. You know, just having something simple like that as a guide for your week can really make a difference. And so if you feel like a little homework this week, I would suggest that you consider this one. I think it's a good one. I open my mind and my heart to infinite possibilities. I like that idea of living in a sea of possibilities. That's what we do. So, with that, I would invite you to join me in what we call a spiritual mind treatment. It's an affirmative prayer. I'm going to say it in first person as though it's for me, but it is for everybody. Just take a deep breath. Just relax your body. No, there's nowhere else you need to be right now. This is the place to be. And I know there is but one power in the universe, and that power is all good. It is joy, it is love, it is peace, it is abundance, balance, order. It has the perfect solution to any perceived dilemma in my life. And I know I am one with it. That very power that created everything and everyone is the same power that experiences life in, through, and as its creation. In, through, and as everything. And even though sometimes I forget who I am, I forget that I'm a vehicle for that very powerful, loving essence. Sometimes I forget about that teaching symbol. I forget that I can just plant the seed with my imagination and know that my good will be manifest for me. I just sometimes forget it. And even though I sometimes forget to make use of these mental faculties that we've talked about, this imagination, will, intuition, perspective, memory, and reason, even though, I now, right here and right now, set an intention to remember that teaching symbol, remember to plant the seed, set the intention that I desire in my life, knowing that it will manifest as all good. And I recognize that as I use these ideas that we've talked about this week, we can use those ideas to expand the possibilities in our life. I declare that right here and right now, and I'm grateful that this is the way it works, that we declare our good, and it is done unto us as we believe. I'm grateful we live in this sea of possibilities, and I release these powerful, loving words right here and right now to my higher power for perfect manifestation. So it is.